I've never been particularly good at traditional fighting games, but I've always had a soft spot for the weird and unique ones that do something different, like the Ultimate Muscle or Def Jam series. So when I first heard about Wu-Tang's Shaolin style, I had to jump in and see if Wu-Tang was really something to F with or not. This is Retro Revisit on Wu-Tang's Shaolin style. For those like me who were unfamiliar at first, Shaolin Style is a wild fighting game for the PlayStation 1 with up to 4 players. Think of it like Def Jam before Def Jam, dripping with hip hop influence, martial arts swagger, and it's even got some wild fatalities in it. But the story of how this game even came to be is just as crazy as the game itself. Back in 1997, a company called Paradox Development, also known as Midway LA and responsible for a bunch of other games you may know, were working on a title called Thrill Kill. Thrill Kill was originally pitched as a monster brawler, but their publisher Virgin Interactive pushed it towards something much darker. It became an ultra-violent 4-player fighter, full of gore and bizarre fetish-inspired characters. It even got hit with an AO rating before it was released, because of how brutal and fucking weird it was. But then in 1998, EA acquired Virgin North America's operations, and Thrill Kill was immediately terminated. Their executives called it obscene and sadistic, and not only did they cancel it, they refused to sell the rights to anyone. So Thrill Kill could never see the light of day, which honestly may be for the better. For most studios, this would have been the end of the journey, but Paradox still had their engine and wanted to do something with it, and that's when the rebirth happened. Instead of throwing everything away, they decided to recycle the foundation into a brand new game, this time partnering with Activision and none other than the Wu-Tang clan, to create what we would now know as Wu-Tang Shaolin Style, also known in Europe as Wu-Tang Taste the Pain. With it finally releasing in late 1999, the game kept Thrill Kill's core hook of chaotic 4-player arena battles, complete with violent finishing moves, but now with an entirely new coat of paint and aesthetic that was pure Wu-Tang, a blend of Shaolin mythology with gritty New York hip-hop attitude. The clans themselves even pitched in and voiced their characters, and tracks from Wu-Tang's music were woven throughout the experience. So when you boot up Wu-Tang Shaolin Style, you're not just playing a hip-hop fighting game, you're playing the spiritual successor to one of the most infamous canceled titles in gaming history. From Thrill Kill's ashes came a project that turned obscenity into artistry, swapping BDSM shock value for Shaolin swagger. And just for the record, leaked builds of Thrill Kill eventually did make their way online, giving both games a weird cult connection. And when you really compare Thrill Kill to Wu-Tang Shaolin Style, it's weird how much of the DNA carried over, yet the tone completely shifted. The underlying combat system, camera angles, and even some of the animations were directly reused from Thrill Kill's engine. You can tell right away that this game was built on the same bones. The 4-player arenas, the brutal finishers, and the same chunky, weighty movement style. But the biggest difference was the soul of the game. Thrill Kill was all about the shock value, gothic torture chambers, leather-clad weirdos, and gore for the sake of controversy. Shaolin Style took that same foundation and flipped it into something that actually had identity and style. Instead of being edgy to provoke people, Paradox leaned into Wu-Tang Clan's mythology and martial arts philosophy. The violence wasn't there to offend anymore, it was there to emphasize the intensity of Shaolin combat. Even visually, the shift is massive. Thrill Kill was dark, claustrophobic, and unsettling, while Shaolin Style's vibrant and alive, with levels that inspired by temples, city streets, and mystical arenas. The entire vibe went from underground horror show to kung fu movie with hip-hop attitude. It's one of the most impressive examples of reusing a cancelled game's tech to make something entirely new and actually better. Despite the overhaul though, you can kinda still feel Thrill Kill's shadow in the background. It's like a piece of gaming history that refused to die, transforming from banned and buried obscenity into a cult classic that proudly wore its influences on its sleeve. So now with all the ridiculous backstory out of the way, we can simply ask the question, despite Shaolin Style's rocky start, just how good was the game when it hit the shelves? And well, honestly, for being a PS1 game, it's incredibly good for its time. There is some stiff controls here and there, a few camera glitches, and the difficulty spikes in story mode can be frustrating, but that's all honestly expected for the era this game came out in. As most people would, I hopped straight into the story mode without checking for a practice or tutorial mode, and was immediately impressed with the intro cutscenes, animation style, and story delivery. Shaolin Style's story is about the Wu-Tang Clan's master, Master Zin, getting kidnapped by an evil warlord named Meng Zhu, who wants to steal the secrets of Wu-Tang martial arts for himself. So the clan unites to fight through Meng Zhu's army of thugs and rival fighters, traveling across different arenas. Each member uses their own unique fighting style, battling through bosses until they finally confront Meng Zhu to rescue their master and protect the Wu-Tang's legacy. It's great to see that every clan member has their own unique fighting style and moveset, rather than just recycling the same attacks with different finishers. RZA throws out wild crane-style strikes, Ghostface hits with heavier combos, and ODB fights exactly just how you'd expect. Unorthodox and chaotic. Through my playthrough of story mode, I chose to play as Method Man, partially because I loved his character, Blaze, in Fight for New York, and I just wanted to see how he'd play in here. His fighting style centers around a giant sledgehammer. His combos are slower, but the massive damage more than makes up for the speed. The game's fights are organized into small hubs of 3 to 5 battles, with a few bonus challenges sprinkled in. To actually complete the game, you need to clear every fight while also finishing specific objectives to fulfill all 36 chambers, a dope reference to the clan's debut album. These challenges range from performing certain fatalities to surviving without losing a life, or even just landing a particular combo. Booting up my first match, I immediately noticed that this was a 3D arena brawler and not just a straightforward fighting game like Tekken or Mortal Kombat. It's frantic, it's messy, and honestly, it's kind of addicting. The game uses a lifestyle system similar to Super Smash Bros. Stocks, where to win the fight, you need to knock out your opponent until they run out of lives. The best way I can describe the gameplay is janky, but fun. It kind of reminds me of those 3D Mortal Kombat games on the PS2, where the mechanics might not be the smoothest, but once you get into the rhythm, it's a blast. Every hit feels meaty, the arenas keep the action moving, and pulling off a combo is super satisfying. Sure, the controls can feel a little stiff at times, but overall, it's got that chaotic, scrappy energy that makes it hard to put down once you're in the zone. After winning a couple matches though, I realized I wasn't seeing the fatalities that I had mentioned earlier. I did a little research and realized that I had actually skipped over something during the boot up, and it's actually something I've never encountered in a game before. Activision was still worried about kids being exposed to the game's level of violence, so they added a parental lock system. To access the full blood and fatalities, you had to input a code that was only printed in the instruction manual. After restarting the game and punching in the code, I immediately unlocked the fatalities that perform at the end of each fight. The way that they snuck this into the game was honestly genius, because as a kid growing up, I never paid attention to any of the title screens or really any of the text-based info. I just wanted to dive straight into the action, so if I was too young to even know that was there, I would have never missed it, and now being an adult, it's cool to go back and unlock the full vision and action of the game. The main thing that caught me off guard was just how severe the difficulty spike in the story mode was. The first couple of fights eased me in as I held my own and tried getting a grasp on the controls, but as soon as I got to the final fight of the first area, there was an old man named Moody So that gave me a firm reality check in the form of a repeated ass whooping. The game does try to throw you a bone by giving you an extra fighter to help out, but even in a 2v1, the advantage felt minimal, so I decided to go off to practice mode, determined to actually sit down and learn the game a little better. The practice mode in this game is actually pretty dope, and I found it surprisingly useful. It gives you combos to learn and shows your inputs so you can figure out what you press if you pulled off something cool or are messing up the combos it's trying to teach you, and overall makes experimenting feel rewarding. That being said, while practicing new combos with Method Man, I started to notice the cracks a bit more. As I mentioned earlier, the button layout and input registration can sometimes feel a little clunky, but it's nothing too game breaking or annoying, just some special moves can be kinda tricky to pull off. Unfortunately though, no matter how much I practiced and tried to improve, I was never able to actually beat the game. In the final area, there's a fight that pits you against 3 clones of the same woman, and it feels like the video game equivalent of getting jumped in an alleyway. I can usually manage to take down 1 clone, maybe 2 on a good run, but by then my health and life are already drained, and I just end up getting wrecked. Eventually, I had to just give up finishing the story mode, at least for now. And while the single player campaign is entertaining for a while, the real heart of this game, and most fighters in general I think, is the multiplayer. If you had a PS1 controller multi-tap, you could throw up to 4 players on one TV and have controllers tangled, everyone yelling, and have pure chaotic couch gameplay at its finest. Honestly, I found myself gravitating towards versus more than story mode. Part of that was the booted difficulty, but also I've always loved setting up dream matches and fighting games, and this one delivers plenty of those moments. And with the expansive roster of unique fighters, I could set up all kinds of matches for hours. In fact, the roster even has more than meets the eye. If you hold select while choosing any of the Wu-Tang clan members, you'll actually start the match as a secret character. From what I found during research, these fighters are meant to be alter egos of the members you pick, but my Wu-Tang knowledge isn't that deep to confirm that, so take it with a grain of salt. Either way, it's a cool touch, and I love when older games added hidden content like this instead of locking it away in modern day paywalls. While digging into this game's history, I also discovered it shipped with some legendary extras. The special edition came with a W-shaped controller modeled after the Wu-Tang logo. Sure, it looks clunky, uncomfortable, and doesn't support rumble, but today it could easily be one of the most sought after collector's items from the PS1 era. Gimmicky or not, I'd absolutely love to give it a try. At the end of the day, Wu-Tang Shaolin style is a perfect example of the late 90s gaming scene. Edgy, experimental, and unafraid to mix worlds that you never thought to see collide. It's messy, it's wild, but it's also unforgettable. Looking back on it now, I actually really enjoyed my time with Wu-Tang Shaolin style. Yeah, it's rough around the edges and the difficulty spikes can be downright brutal, but that's part of the charm of older games like these. Beneath the jank, there's a genuinely fun and unique fighter that captures both the attitude of Wu-Tang Clan and the experimental spirit of late 90s gaming. It makes me wonder what the series could have been if it had continued. With With the popularity of arena brawlers, couch co-op, and even the fighting game revival that we've seen in recent years, I can easily imagine Wu-Tang Shaolin style doing incredibly well with a modern remaster or even a spiritual successor. Until that day comes though, Shaolin style will remain one of the hidden gems of PS1 era. If you're a fan of fighting games, hip-hop history, or just love digging up cool classics, this game is absolutely worth revisiting. Thank you so much for watching if you made it all the way to the end. I'm always taking suggestions on what game to play next, so if you have a game or a series you'd like to see me review, leave it in a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, I hope you subscribe and stick around, and until next time, I'll see you in the next one.